Up next, residents of red states tell fleeing New Yorkers, don't come here.
Tell you right now, there must really be some stupid people in New York City. I honestly do believe this. Just with a little bit of deep diving on Google. One, that new mayor that y'all voted in the other day, he has no control over the rent. None whatsoever. So he lied to you there.
Let's do a little quick fact check, because I'm inclined to believe her, but I want to know for myself. Real quick, guy in the chair, you there?
Absolutely, I'm right here. Just let me know what you need.
Does the mayor have control over rent control? And if so, how so? And if not, why not?
The mayor doesn't directly control rent control. Rent control laws in New York City are mostly governed by state law and managed by the state's housing agencies. The mayor can advocate for changes or influence housing policy, but they don't have the power to impose or change rent control by themselves. So in short, it's not in the mayor's direct control, it's more of a state level issue.
Well, can the mayor institute a rent freeze?
In some cases, yes, the mayor can push for a rent freeze, but it usually happens through the city's rent guidelines board. The board is the one that sets rent adjustments for rent stabilized apartments, and the mayor can influence or advocate for a freeze if there's a strong rules in it, like an economic crisis. But the mayor can't just do it unilaterally. It has to go through the proper board and legal channels.
Makes sense. Well, there you have it. She seems to be on point. Let me let her continue.
He also has no control over the bus, so he cannot make it free. Now, he can suggest, same with the rent, but whether they do it is up to them. But he can't force them into doing it. So, and grocery stores, the free grocery stores, it's a $60 million startup. Where's he gonna get that $60 million from? You think the rich are gonna do it? Yeah, right. The rich are packing up their shit now and moving to other states. They're not stupid. So who's gonna pay it? You are. See y'all on the flip side.
Oh, she's citing her sources. It's crazy because in theory, what he's trying to suggest and use his power to do is disastrous, but there are safeguards to prevent a mayor, not a governor, a mayor, for having unilateral authority and seeing his vision all the way through. New York honestly should be grateful.
Some of y'all got a little annoyed because of what I said yesterday on my post about Mamdani and being the new mayor of New York City. And I told y'all, don't bring that foolishness down here. I was trying to help you out. I live in Georgia and I'm from Alabama. Alabama said they closed. And I don't want y'all down there no way either because I like to go home. So there are certain things we appreciate down here and certain things we don't appreciate. So I was just trying to make sure you knew what to expect when you came down here. But I wasn't clear, so let me make myself clear.
Make it clear.
The things we love down here, we love God. We go to church a lot. We got a church on every corner. And the church across the street could be named the same name as the church across the other side of the street. All right? So just know that we got Lutheran, Baptist, Holiness, Pentecostal, Catholic. We got all of them down here. We love going to church every Sunday. Then we like to eat after church every Sunday. And we like Sunday dinner. We love guns. Everybody got a gun. So just trying to let you know, you never know who you're running up on. So be careful because they got that concealed license. You don't even know they got it. So just be aware that the pew-pew is on the side most times. Be surprised. A lot of us down here like Donald Trump. So be aware. That may make you feel uncomfortable. A lot of us like the Confederate flag, and we fly the American flag. Every house got an American flag on it. So you may not like that. I was trying to help y'all out because my daddy over there already asking for money. And it ain't been 24 hours since he been in office. I wasn't trying to stop y'all from being great. So down here, you may feel a little uncomfortable. Come down here, we like what we like. You like what you like. So make sure you pick a place that fit and make you feel comfortable and happy. All right, hope that helps.
That's the beauty of America, because a lot of people like to pretend as if just because America is one nation, one country, that governors don't have a lot of power in their specific states, and you can elect those constituents in those states to do the things and push the policies that you like as an individual citizen. So it's the same thing with abortion rights. I don't know if I can say this, baby deletions. I don't know how to, if I can say it, but just because it's not federal law doesn't mean that there aren't governed states that permit that. So a lot of people make the argument that they're fighting women's autonomy over their body, but in reality, you can go to whatever state that you deem appropriate that fits the lifestyle that you want to live. The funny part about it is that a lot of liberal-minded people go to liberal-minded states and realize that's exactly what they don't want.
So whenever I try to give someone an objective explanation on why Zoran Mamdani's policies around housing and the cost of living will likely make the crisis worse in New York City, I'm immediately met with people claiming that the laws of supply and demand don't pertain to housing. So I created some charts to explain in this video exactly how supply and demand works within the housing market as well as in municipal economics. Markets are made up of price and quantity, and for there to be any market, there needs to be two sides of the market. The supply side.
See, that's where he's fucking up already. He's speaking logic to illogical humans that are voting based off of how they feel. But I'm gonna let him go ahead.
The demand side. The supply side in the housing market is made up of landlords and developers. And the supply side is greedy. It wants to be able to charge as much as possible
Make as much
for
money.
as many units as possible, so it has a positive relationship between price and quantity. The higher the price, the more quantity they're going to want to try to provide in the market.
Not only that though, if they price themselves out of the market, then the demand is going to slow down. So that's going to be a signal to them that they have to lower the price. If demand is excessive, then that's going to be a signal to them they have to raise the price. So they're still subject to the bounds of how the market operates. But everything he's saying is all facts.
Demand side is made up of renters, and renters try to be as cheap as possible. They try to get as much as possible for as little as possible. So the demand curve has a negative relationship between price and quantity. The higher the price, the less they want it. The lower the price, the more demand there'll be for it.
Right.
No one side gets to control prices within the market. It's where the two of them meet in the middle, which dictates market price. And the point at which they meet is called equilibrium.
Yes.
It's important to understand that supply and demand curves can shift based on external factors. A perfect example of this would be New York's real estate market during COVID. P1 represents what the average price of an apartment was in New York City prior to COVID. Then, when COVID hit, the demand curve shift in. There was significantly less demand for rental units, so prices were lowered. At the same time, so many people were moving out of the city, supply shifted to the right. There was suddenly a huge increase in supply, so prices lowered even more. And this is why the housing crisis is a supply side issue. So objectively, in order to decrease rent, you need to increase the supply. And a big part of increasing the supply is to take away regulations that make it incredibly hard and incredibly expensive to build more inventory in the city. But that takes a lot of hard work to do. But instead of doing the hard work required to shift the supply curve to the right and decrease prices, what Mamdani plans to do is artificially cap the price with rent freeze and extension of the rent stabilization policy. This splits the supply and demand side curves away from its equilibrium. This in turn reduces the supply of affordable housing while the demand maintains the same, and the split you get creates a shortage.
It may not even just stay the same. If his policies are actually implemented, it's going to attract more like-minded individuals to the city, so they're going to have to supplement that excess if everything plays out the way that he plans it.
You very quickly see are two things: stunted inventory growth, there's no building of new units because it's no longer profitable to rent them, and a sharp increase in the price of rent for any non-rent controlled or rent stabilized unit. To simplify the problem even further, imagine that there is a building with 30 rent units in it, right? And 10 of them have their rent frozen. The operating expenses of that building still maintain the same. So in order to be able to run the building and meet overhead, you need to raise the rent on all the other units to subsidize the units that have a freeze on them. So at best, these policies create winners and losers, and at worst, they create only losers. Let me know what you think in the comments, and like and follow for daily economic and public policy review.
It's hard for renters, the ones that's on the demand side, to understand the supply side because their goal is to get it as cheaply as humanly possible. And they don't understand that that's a good thing to help the market reach equilibrium, but if you control the supply side and drag it down to you, then it's going to ultimately collapse.
New reports are saying that Zoran Mamdani might have committed a federal crime back when he was becoming a US citizen 7 years ago. And here's the wild part. During his naturalization process back in 2018, Mamdani allegedly failed to disclose some major facts, like the fact that he's praised terrorists, that he openly expressed disdain for the US Constitution, and that he's a proud supporter of the Democratic Socialists of America, a group that has been classified as anti-American and even communist in ideology. Now, when you apply for citizenship, there is a section, Section 9, Question 5A, that literally asks if you've ever been affiliated with a group that's hostile towards the United States. And if Mamdani checked no, while knowing this, that's called concealment of material information. And under federal law, that means his citizenship was illegally obtained. That's not just a paperwork issue, that is a deportation level offense. The Department of Justice could launch an investigation, review his naturalization record, and if they can confirm he lied, they can revoke his citizenship altogether. And honestly, if someone hates America so much, praises terrorists, bash our Constitution, and align themselves with groups that despise the very freedoms that make America what it is, then maybe they don't belong in a position of power representing Americans. Because loving your country isn't optional when you swear an oath to serve it. If he truly despises America so much, then maybe he should go back to Uganda, because we don't need leaders who hate the nation they're supposed to protect.
I'm not gonna lie, I'm not even gonna do a deep dive on this because it sounds like a stretch, but even still, it's like, you know, there is a deep disdain for his ideology and his policies. So you're gonna see people like this that's gonna scrub through his past with a fine-tooth comb, trying to find something to get him out of office with. I'm not saying it's good or bad, I'm just saying that just is what it is.
So I want to give a quick rundown on how Zoran Mamdani plans to increase the supply of affordable housing in the city, as well as provide some charts and basic math that explains why it's likely a very inefficient way of doing it. And since this policy is estimated to cost the city $100 billion to implement, and our entire city budget is only $110 billion, meaning that the effective tax rate will have to double to pay for it, it's worth taking a minute to understand it. If you've been following me, you understand by now that the way that we bring down the average cost of housing is by increasing the supply, shifting the supply curve to the right. This will bring down the average cost of rent while increasing the quantity of affordable units.
Let's say that you have the only banana tree on an island full of apples. The value of that banana is going to be exceedingly greater than the value of those apples because of supply and demand. There's less bananas available and a surplus of apples. So if you increase the housing, the building of housing, and you make it easier for development to increase, then you increase supply astronomically. That supply makes it less competitive to find housing because there's more houses.
And the way that Mamdani plans on doing that is by implementing a housing model that's very similar to the model that they use in Vienna. In fact, he calls it the Vienna model. In this model, the city buys up plots of lands and develops it into affordable housing and acts as the landlord, and caps the yearly rent increase to around 1%. The only time the rent can be increased more than 1% is when a unit becomes vacant. By doing this, it cuts out profit, and therefore you're able to offer rental units for much cheaper. However, what it also does is it assumes the risk and cost burden of these units onto the taxpayer. Because their annual rent increase is capped at 1%, they have a much steeper or inelastic supply curve than a market rate apartment would. Meaning they have much lower tenant turnover and thus vacancy rates, meaning that the supply is always very inelastic. Essentially, once a tenant moves into one, they never move out of them. And although their annual rent increase is capped at 1%, the annual increase in the cost of operating the business isn't capped at 1%. So what you typically see is the cost of operating one of these apartment complexes quickly surpasses the amount of rental revenue they bring in, leading to a deficit in their budget. And that deficit needs to be covered by the taxpayers, regardless of if you actually live in one of those units or not.
That means that if something goes wrong, plumbing, repair costs, replacing the roof, all those different things, that is automatically going to increase over time. And so if the amount that you're paying in rent doesn't exceed that, especially if there's a mortgage on the place, then you're going to be operating at a deficit. That's why it's not good for a city to manage real estate. It's better for private investors to manage real estate because they have the experience.
Because of this lack of turnover, the deficit at which they operate these buildings at continues to balloon more and more as the years go on. And eventually, the city has to make a decision. Are we going to continue to raise everyone else's taxes to subsidize these apartments? Or when a unit does become vacant, are we going to disproportionately increase the rent to cover all the operating losses of the other apartments?
In order to be able to keep the upgrade or the updated apartment in compliance and running, they would have to increase the taxes on the entire tax base. You'll see an uptick in how much money is taken out of your check as the tax base. Or on the off chance that someone does vacate, the rent that they're going to charge the next tenant is going to be so astronomically large, it would have to be enough to cover the deficit of all remaining units. But who's going to want to jump into that, where their neighbor's rent is $2,200 a month, but theirs is $6,000? That's what it's going to look like.
This explains my previous point about how this policy causes the supply curve to become inelastic and steepen, where now price increases happen at a far disproportionate rate to the quantity of affordable housing that's going onto the market. And what you've seen happen in Vienna is, after years of raising everyone's taxes to subsidize these buildings, eventually they say enough is enough, and they just have to disproportionately increase the rent on one of these units when they become vacant. And this rent increase is typically very, very high, sometimes as high as 20%. When you calculate the aggregate rent increase of one of these buildings over the course of 5 to 10 years, it typically equals exactly what the rent increase would be of a privately owned building. All of his policies are predicated on this idea that profit is bad, and that by having the government provide services, you can absorb that profit and offer things at or below market price. And although that does sound like it makes sense, what it does in reality is it shifts the risk and cost burden away from developers and landlords and instead puts it on taxpayers. Let me know what you think in the comments, and like and follow for daily economic and public policy review.
It's just shifting the burden somewhere else. There is always going to be a burden when it comes to operating in the real estate market.
The mayor of New York can't raise taxes. That's not what he doesn't have that power. That belongs to the state legislature and the governor.
Yes, that's in fact, and he ran this campaign with all these promises about all these things that he was going to do, and most of the things that he promised to do, he actually cannot do legally. And the things that he can do, he's grossly underestimated the costs by tens of billions of dollars.
This is what happens when you elect liberal leaders who don't have a clear understanding of budgeting and financial literacy.
The one thing I can't stand is that I'm leaving New York ass nigga. Leave. Bye-bye. Why you make an announcement? Go. The New York Post over here. If Mamdani wins, 25% of New Yorkers will flee. Who cares? First of all, New York Post, half of you is Long Island. Don't y'all have a heroin epidemic to think about? Like, why you in our business? Mind your cop business and trash Long Island business, first of all. Second of all, y'all ain't going nowhere. Where you want to go? Florida? It's mad hot. Like, come on. You don't want to be there. You want to be here. We all know you want to be here. Like, y'all ain't got nowhere to go. In the pandemic, they threatened they was leaving. Like, they was going in groves. And guess what? They all came back because it's New York. Literally the best city in the world. So, you know what? If you do leave, I'll be very happy as a third generation New Yorker, but you ain't going nowhere. Shut up. No one cares.
The exodus is slow and deliberate. I don't think she understands that. So the New York that she knew years ago is slowly and deliberately transforming into something totally different that by the time she recognizes it, is not going to be the same New York that she's used to. Your tax base is leaving. The rich ones.
Hi, I'm Michael. I'm a real estate agent in New York City, and I lease hundreds of apartments a year across Manhattan, Brooklyn, and Queens. Here's how Zohran Mamdani's housing plans will impact the rental market. Mamdani's housing plan proposes 200,000 new units over 10 years, which sticks to the same insufficient rate of the 2010s. The difference is Mamdani plans to triple the share of affordable, rent-stabilized housing. That means the supply of market rate rentals could fall by as much as 2/3, significantly increasing the price for market rate rentals. Next, let's look at Mamdani's rent control plan, which negatively impacts the overall supply of rental housing. Why? Because if developers know they can't raise rents in the future, it makes rental housing less attractive to build. Let's look at some data. A 2019 study found that after San Francisco expanded rent control in 1994, landlords converted rentals to condos or redeveloped buildings, leading to a 15% loss in rental supply and a 5.1% increase in citywide market rents. After Berlin enacted a 5-year rent freeze, new rental listings plummeted by 41%. And get this, when Argentina abolished rent control nationwide in 1991, production increased by 43%. A wide body of economic research shows that while rent control helps current tenants, it discourages new construction, leads to unit deterioration, and hurts new renters, young people, immigrants, middle-income families. If we want to lower rents and tackle the housing shortage, we need policies that drastically increase the production from the current abysmal rate of 20,000 units a year and incentivize building more homes. Make no mistake, Mamdani's housing plans are bad for renters in New York City.
They don't understand the long-term effects of these things. They're completely okay with pushing the burden off into the future versus being able to deal with the way that the market is. A lot of people are dealing with high cost in rent, and they think that the answer to fixing the high cost in rent is to freeze it. Whereas the reality of it is the housing market has been crippled because of these certain stipulations when it comes to rent control. If you free up the developers to be able to make as much money as they want and incentivize them to continue to make more money, then what you're subsequently going to do is you're going to lower the demand for housing, which also lowers the competition for the rent being so high.
Everybody shut the fuck up. Hey, shut the fuck up. Let me tell you something right now.
If you made it this far, check out the video we just did explaining Mamdani's rent freeze policies and the effects that it's going to have on the New York housing market.